If the New Orleans Saints want to stand any chance against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday, they'll need to improve this one thing. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, Brandon Staley's defense is all about putting his players in the best position. We'll discuss how he can do it up against the Seattle Seahawks. We'll take a look at the New Orleans Saints offense going up against Seattle as well, and why being on the move might be the best solution to keep pressure off of young quarterback Spencer Rattler. And we're kicking everything off with the one thing that makes this New Orleans Saints Seattle Seahawks game a non-starter or a potential upset. We got that all coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much. Whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head over to FanDuel.com today to get started. The New Orleans Saints must fix their third down defense if they want any chance at competing with the Seattle Seahawks at Lumen Field on Sunday. No, the Seattle Seahawks have not been as impressive at home as they were in their past, currently 2 of 7 over the course of the last 9 games that they have played there. However, the Saints are still in a situation to where they need to do all the right things in order to maximize that potential opportunity. And one of the things that will clearly cut them off at the knees before they even get a chance is going to be the third down defense. The New Orleans Saints are one of 4 teams in the NFL to allow more than half or more of the opposing team's third down conversions to be converted. And that's not including penalties, by the way, right? Third downs by penalty. And then it would even go up for a little bit from there if that were included. They are also one of the worst teams in the league at getting off the field in 3rd and 7 or longer. So I wanted to take a look at what it is that the Saints do in their third down situations that allow them, or rather don't allow them, to get off of the field. Couple of things to know first. The Saints play a lot of cover 3, whether it's first down, second down, or third down. So taking a look at the specific coverage attack, they don't really stray too far away from what it is that they like to do. Cover 3 is tied for the most snaps that they have played in a coverage scheme on third downs. And here's how they fared on those. 6 snaps so far in cover 3. The other one with 6 snaps is cover 1. We'll dive into that in a moment here. But they have allowed 5 first downs on those 6 cover 3 snaps on third down. 4 through the air, 1 as a rush. They have no sacks on third downs when they're out there in cover 3 as well. And they've allowed 87 receiving yards in that coverage. So cover 3 has been a bit of a trouble spot for New Orleans when they turn to that with their third downs. They typically go middle of field close, meaning that there is a deep safety in the middle of the field. When we're talking about cover 3, there's 3 defenders that are splitting up the field and cutting it into thirds. Typically speaking, that's a safety in the middle, and then 2 cornerbacks on the outside. When we're talking cover 1, it's just 1 deep safety and the rest are in man coverage. And so when the Saints have gone to cover 1 over the 6 times that they have allowed 1 catch on 4 attempts for just 6 yards. That 1 catch did go for a first down. They also allowed a run for a first down and surrendered a first down to penalty during that as well. But again, that's only 3 out of 6. And so the Saints might start looking at potentially playing some more cover 1 or adjusting how it is that they attack with cover 3. The Saints have also in cover 6 a few times, which means that they go cover 2 on one side. So that half of the field is split by 2 defenders, and then cover 3 on the other side, or rather cover 4 on one side, cover 2 on the other side. So cover 4 with 2 defenders taking away 1 deep side of the field, and then cover 2 on the other side with 1 defender taking the other half of the field. And so with that, they have allowed 2 first downs on those 5 reps, and both of them came from passing down. So 2 for 5 on that. So maybe a little bit more of that kind of Fangio cover 6 game plan might be usable by Brandon Staley and this New Orleans Saints defense going into this matchup up against Seattle, who of course are no stranger to cover 3 because that was that old Legion of Boom defense, right? That's what that was all based around. So maybe switching over to that cover 6 could be a way to go. We'll see how the Saints decide to go about this. Here's the other thing that they've done so far. Out of the 28 third downs that have been converted through the air, right? So we're talking about like all these drop back ones, 20 of which they have blitzed, 20 of which they have not blitzed, 8 of which they have blitzed. And the difference there is 13 of 20 of those non-blitzed third downs have been converted as a first down, whether through the air or through penalty. And then 4 out of the 8 when blitzed have been converted for first down. So 50% on one side, well over 50% on the other side. Both have 1 sack. One's got 2 touchdowns without a blitz. One has allowed 1 touchdown with the blitz, and a much better completion percentage from quarterbacks as well. So maybe sending some more pressure, simulated pressure, or blitzing when it comes to those third downs could be something that helps this Saints defense as well. They've created pressure on only 6 of those 28 third downs, 4 of which resulted in first downs. Only 1 of them was due to penalty. So again, creating pressure on third down feels like the right way to go in that situation. We're talking about 4 out of 28 in that, in those reps. And so getting that pressure on opposing quarterbacks on third down could certainly help this New Orleans Saints secondary and help this team get off the field on third downs. And as Brandon Staley said on Thursday before practice, obviously a big part of this too is getting off the field by not fouling or giving up penalties on those third downs, which surrender an automatic first down there. That's been a big issue. The Saints defense right now have allowed 8.8 yards per attempt on third down. All these numbers from our great friends over at True Media. By the way, you can't find stuff like this anywhere else. But 8.8 yards per attempt. So that's per passing attempt, not per play. That's big, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Saints have struggled so much on third and long is because they're giving up nearly 9 yards per attempt in the passing game on third downs. When you throttle that down to first and second downs, all of a sudden it's 5.5. And so it's a much, much better, the Saints defense, a much, much better first and second down defense than they have been a third down defense so far. And 6 of the 8 sacks that they've had so far this year have come on first and second downs and only 2 on third down. So again, to me, this all comes down to pressure. Yeah, you got to be able to cover on the back end, but man, it's way easier to cover when you're covering for 3 or 4 seconds at most, as opposed to 5 or 6 seconds, 4 seconds at least. You've got to get pressure on these opposing quarterbacks. You've got to get pressure on Sam Darnold. You got to make him see ghosts, as we were talking about in the squad show yesterday. So all of this detail just goes to say the very simple thing that the Saints must get off the field on third down, and they desperately, desperately, desperately must improve their third down defense if they want to be in position to win football games, come up with an upset, or to a certain extent in certain games, merely compete at this point. Remember, we're not judging this New Orleans Saints team by wins, losses, and scoreboard throughout this season. We're judging them by how do you improve over the course of these 18 weeks, because we're looking at the beginning of a thing, whereas last year we're looking at the end of a thing, right? And so progress is what this is all about. This is a great place for the New Orleans Saints to start, especially over on the defensive side. Coming up next, if the New Orleans Saints want to keep Spencer Rattler clean in this game, doing so by moving the line of scrimmage could be a very good way to go. We got that coming up for you next. We continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The weekend is almost here. That means that it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like DoorDash is delivering every Saturday, it was Jonas Sanker for me that delivered this past Sunday for the New Orleans Saints. Just like those DoorDash streaks, which you can continue to put together every time that you order on Saturdays for all your awards, you have seen Jonas Sanker put together a streak of 71 defensive plays, played 100% of the snaps when the New Orleans Saints needed him most after losing starting safety Julian Blackmon, being praised by defensive coordinator Brandon Staley as a complete safety with a solid rookie debut. Looking forward to seeing more from him this Sunday up against the Seattle Seahawks. And just like Jonas Anchor delivered for the Saints, DoorDash delivers every Saturday for you with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday that you order and stack it all up all throughout the season, and you can earn up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the best place to go to elevate your Sundays. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you are ready for each week's kickoff with this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Same game parlays, live betting, odds, lines, props, whatever it is that you're looking for, you're going to find it all over at FanDuel. And right now, the New Orleans Saints 7.5-point favorites now on the road up against the Seattle Seahawks. A pretty big line if you wanted to bet on the money line with your first five going up, taking the Seattle Seahawks up against the Saints. That could be a nice way to walk away with that $300 in bonus bets. Or maybe you like the Saints to cover as they nearly have each of the 2 weeks, depending upon when you put your money down. So go and check them out today if you're ready to play over at FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com and get started. That's FanDuel.com for your first $5 bet. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints are going to see a big challenge in the middle of their offensive line going up against a very talented interior defensive line with Seattle. And therefore, getting Spencer Rattler on the move might be one of the best ways to go about keeping him clean and allowing him to be able to operate that Kellen Moore offense. And of course, Kellen Moore loves a quarterback on the move. We saw how much success he's seen with that with guys like Jalen Hurts, and even brought some of that out for guys like Justin Herbert, as well as, I always want to say Justin Herbert, as well as Dak Prescott, although those guys were a little bit more statuesque in terms of their level of play, but still finding ways to be able to do that. So I wanted to take a look and do a little bit of a deep dive on the Seahawks interior defensive line, most namely Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Jarran Reed. Those are the three guys that I'm really looking at as the players that could be major impact players going up against the New Orleans Saints. And so what I wanted to dig into was how much pressure does Seattle create and how much of that comes from the interior of the defensive line. And so the Seattle Seahawks right now have generated a league-leading 49.4% in terms of pass rush pressure percentage. So that's the number of times they generate pressure on pass rushing snaps or opposing quarterback dropbacks, if you will, and not including no plays, penalties that erase a play, stuff like that. So of the 39 pressures that Pro Football Focus credits the Seattle Seahawks with having generated so far throughout this season, 18 have come from either Williams, Murphy, or Reed. It's been right up the middle, almost half the time. 18 out of 39 of those pressures are coming from right up the middle. So that trio is also responsible for 3 of Seattle's 4 sacks on the season as well, with one of those sacks coming from Julian Love, the super versatile, hyper disruptive safety over there in Seattle, who right now, at least following Wednesday's practice, was dealing with, and Thursday's practice was dealing with injury. We'll see what happens with him going into Friday's practice. But for New Orleans, that is going to be a major matchup. Now, the thing that makes this a little bit challenging is that the Saints currently have 2 interior offensive linemen that are dealing with injuries. Trevor Penning is working his way back from a toe injury. Dylan Radins has missed Wednesday and Thursday's practices with toe injuries, or at least wasn't seen on Thursday at the time that I'm recording this. And so the Saints are in a big time situation here to where they desperately need to protect Spencer Rattler up the middle. Now, of course, doing that with the interior offensive line as they have it is the ideal situation. There's no doubt about that. However, being able to also help to move that offensive line and move Spencer Rattler a bit is going to be good. Sprint outs, doing things like RPOs where he can get on the move a little bit, play action boots, play action rollouts, all of that. So with the Saints Thursday injury report having just dropped as I'm recording this, Trey Palmer was downgraded as a DNP, and then wide receiver Devaughn Vele was added with another in-practice injury. Here we go again, everybody. This time a hip, and so he was limited on Thursday. So even the weapons, although Trey Palmer hasn't been active so far this season, but even the weapons as a big-bodied target like a Devaughn Vele, that could have a big impact on having that target to quickly get the ball out. So all the more reason to get Spencer Rattler on the move so that he can buy some time. Dylan Radins did not practice again on Thursday. Taliesin Falonga did not practice again on Thursday. And Trevor Penning was again limited on Thursday. He seemed pretty positive when he was spoken to in the locker room on Wednesday, but we'll see exactly what happens there. So if you're dealing with a loss of a big-bodied weapon, if you're or a limitation of a big-bodied weapon like a Devaughn Vele, if you're dealing with pressure up the middle, one of the best ways to relieve some of that for your young quarterback is to get him on the move. So definitely something that I'll be watching to see if the Saints find ways to do that. They did a good job of it up against San Francisco, particularly in the red zone where they were doing these sprint outs, where they were kind of utilizing some of these zone reads and these extra passing options on play action and things like that. So we'll see how the Saints go about it, but I think that would be a big time key for them, is getting Spencer Rattler on the move. Now, two other players on the offensive side are going to be very important to this matchup. Number one is running back Alvin Kamara. The two things that you want to travel, and this is the Saints' first road game of the season, first regular season road game of the season. You want your run game to travel. You want your defense to travel. Now, we talked about how the defense not only needs to travel, but improve, particularly on third downs. Alvin Kamara needs to just maintain what it is that he has done in his previous three matchups up against the Seattle Seahawks. 3 games against Seattle, 3 wins for the New Orleans Saints against Seattle. 3 of the most recent situations also come down to 3 touchdowns for him. And on top of all that, he also had 3 games with over 90 receiving yards and 3 games with over 50 receiving yards. So when Alvin Kamara plays against the Seattle Seahawks, he tends to do well, and he tends to help that team find its way to a victory. And so he would be a major part. If he's able to go out there and figure out a way to accumulate 150 all-purpose yards, then obviously that's going to help the New Orleans Saints quite a bit. I have him with 2 touchdowns going into this game, was my bold prediction on the squad show. So we'll see if he's able to come up with that. I do think, though, that one of the biggest things that the Saints are going to need in order to make sure that Alvin Kamara gets going is that they are doing a poor job up front, statistically, of creating yards before contact. They are forcing these running backs to pick up yards after contact. And Alvin Kamara has done a good job of that, but that's not a very sustainable way to create in your run game. And we talked about already the importance of that very, very good defensive line, particularly on the interior. This is another area where you would look to try to elevate that by winning at the line of scrimmage and creating some yards for your running back so you're not forcing them to create all on their own, which is what's happened pretty consistently through the first 2 weeks. We knew coming into the season that the offensive line was going to be a concern. I know some people said it was going to be a strength. I never bought into it. This offensive line was always going to be a concern. And these are the ways that you're seeing it so far, right? Pressure on the quarterback, particularly in, pivotal moments. And then the lack of ability to get push in the run game, which has been a consistent issue with much of the same offensive linemen in recent years. The other player that I think is going to be really important on offense that's not an offensive lineman is going to be Juwan Johnson. And I know everybody is, you feel one way or another about Juwan Johnson. It doesn't matter. The dude is the leading receiver for the team. Caught his first touchdown last week and is also number 5 in the league amongst tight ends in receiving yards. He has been the New Orleans Saints' most consistent and best weapon on the offensive side, or let's say best weapon on the offensive side. 2 drops early on in the game. The touchdown with the pass breakup at the end with Arizona. I can't say consistent just yet, but if he gets the consistency down to where he doesn't have those like late starts in games, he looks more like he did earlier in the game against Arizona than he did, if he looks more like that, then looking like what he looked like early on against San Francisco, then I think that you're in a much better place in terms of getting a fast start, which this New Orleans Saints team has always struggled to do when it comes to in-game situations. All right, coming up next, the New Orleans Saints defense must continue to put players in their best position. Let's discuss how they can do that and why the New Orleans Saints have already put such a big emphasis on it. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. They're those businesses that help to bring the neighborhood together and make it feel more like home, whether it's that local sports bar where it's packed for game days, or maybe it's the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or that corner deli that's been serving its community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives as well. One of my favorite spots here in New Orleans in Mid-City is runs on Square, and that is my good friends over at Flower Moon Bagels, one of my favorite places to go for a quick bite in the morning or something like that, or even to go and grab coffee and everything. So Flower Moon, definitely one of my favorite spots along the Lafitte Greenway, and they use Square there as well. So make sure you go and check them out. Square is a proud partner of over 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. So you can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. Before you do, go and support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy that you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints have made it an emphasis to continue to build their scheme around what it is that their players do best, rather than create molds for their players to fit in. And that's not just happening on the offensive side, as we discussed all throughout the offseason. It's also happening over on the defensive side. I asked Brandon Staley on Thursday how it is that he goes about elevating players from good to great, from great to elite. So not necessarily the development that comes naturally for guys that are coming in as young players, but what do you do with those guys that are already good? How do you get them to great? Those guys that are already great, how do you get them to elite? Those guys that are already elite, how do you get them to even better, right? How do you maximize them? And one of the things that he talked about, beyond helping them make sure that they have a clear vision of what their role is in the defense, but also helping them understand what the vision of the team is, which comes together over time. He made a great comment about, he's a different coach than he was a week ago. And Kellen Moore kind of talked about that a little bit too, to where especially September football is kind of figuring out what your identity is, and then you can build on top of that identity as you move forward. Sounds like Brandon Staley has a very similar approach over on the defensive side. And he also says that one of the biggest things is making sure that you're actually giving those players opportunities, calling plays for those players, those good players, those great players, those elite players. And so that got me to thinking, who are some of those good, great, and elite players on the New Orleans Saints defense, and how do the Saints coaching staff over the defensive side, led by Brandon Staley as defensive coordinator, how do you go about elevating them by making sure that you put them in the right positions to be called, have plays called for them, to be able to maximize and make plays in areas where they're strongest, as opposed to putting them in places where they're weakest and having to play that matchup game a little bit. And so I came off with a list of 5 players here in terms of good, great, elite. So I'm throwing in players like, and this isn't all of the players that fall into those categories, because I'd put like I actually did use Justin Reed, but like I'd put Kool-Aid McKinstry in the good category at least, but I'm not including him in this. And so I'm looking at Alontae Taylor, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, especially with Chase Young probably out. He did not participate in practice Wednesday and Thursday, unlike offensive lineman Dylan Ravens, who's already been ruled out after Thursday's practice. Chase Young still has no game designation at this time, but I doubt that he pops up and practices on Friday and then plays on Sunday. That would be a surprise to me. So with him expected to be out by me at this point, I'll go with Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, of course, an elite player, and then Justin Reed in that category as well. And so with those 5 players, how do you, and like I said, they're not the only ones. You might disagree where some are good, some are not, but I'm not going to go into that. Just like these are some of those players that I'm thinking about. For Alontae Taylor, I think that he's best when he is allowed to be disruptive. And so we talked about those third down blitz numbers and those even, game blitz numbers and pressure numbers and things like that. Saints near the top of the NFL in sacks with 8, but near the bottom of the NFL in pressure percentage at around 22-23%. And so because they have sort of that wide gap, maybe there's an opportunity for Alontae Taylor to be able to help contribute there, because the defensive line might not be getting those quick wins that you want to get. In fact, the Saints, according to Next Gen Stats, have a longer time to pressure than every single qualifying quarterback in the NFL has a time to throw. You understand what I'm saying there? The Saints take longer to get to quarterbacks than quarterbacks across the league on average take to throw the football. So you might need to start blitzing. You might need to start sending extra pressure so that you can build some of those quick pressure opportunities. That's where I think a guy like Alontae Taylor comes in. I think a perfect example of calling a play for a guy on the defensive side was that third down blitz that was dialed up against Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals with Alontae Taylor blitzing out of the snap. Blitzing out of the slot. It's a perfect example of calling a play for a player. Carl Granderson finding ways to maximize his one-on-one opportunities. Same thing for Cam Jordan, who seems to be really comfortable rushing from that wide 9 outside the tight end alignment as opposed to sort of that 4-eye inside the tackle or over the top of the tackle sometimes alignment. Getting those guys an opportunities here to be able to take advantage of those one-on-ones so that they get a chance to maybe get some of that quick pressure generated. Demario Davis giving him the opportunity to just kind of freelance a little bit as a guy in the middle of the field, but having the option to, if a running back doesn't run a route, can he blitz? Allowing him to be able to roam to take care of that running back in the flat, allowing him to be able to read and react on some of those throws to the outlet in the flat areas, things like that. That's a place where I think that obviously he's at his best, especially crashing downhill in the run game and giving him the freedom to be able to go out there and act as a playmaker as opposed to just filling a role. And then finally, I look at Justin Reed as being one of these guys too. He's already in a position before every single snap that is the best spot for him, which is orchestrating the defense, right? Being a guy that's running communication, that's making calls, that's looking to see what it is the offense is doing, and then trying to respond to that. Allowing him to continue to build that muscle within this defensive system, I think, is very important. And then allowing him to be able to prowl the field as well, to where he sometimes drops back, to where he sometimes comes down into the box, where he's sometimes in run support first, to where sometimes he's a deep defender, just allowing him to be able to take advantage of a little bit of that versatility, which maximizes the disguise that you can use between him and rookie Jonas Senker. I think give them some opportunities there. So those are some ways that I think that the Saints can do that moving forward into this matchup up against Seattle, especially with guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's number 2 in the NFL in receiving yards. So I'm looking to see, we know why the Saints want to do it because that's what makes their defense work. But on top of that, here are some examples of how they can get it done on Sunday. All right, y'all, we'll have one more quick episode for you tomorrow, getting you ready with everything you need to know from today's practice, as well as the elevations to watch on Saturday. We appreciate you very much. Make sure you go and check us out on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every Monday through Friday as well. Thanks for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation, I'll holla at you.